The United States has just opened a new phase of the war, and this time the target is not only Iran's missile launchers or command posts. American B-1 Lancer bombers are now striking the country's energy infrastructure, hitting oil refineries, fuel depots, transport centers, and large industrial sites tied to missile production. That is a major escalation because these strikes are aimed at something much bigger than a single military target.
Now, tonight, Israeli forces dropped bombs on Iran's oil refineries outside the capital. The U.S. and Israel together are averaging as many strike sorties per day as the entire coalition during the Gulf War.
They are aimed at the economic backbone that helps Iran fund its missiles, support its proxies, and keep the regime's war machine running. This is now day 9 of Operation Epic Fury, and the scale of the damage is already becoming impossible to ignore. Multiple energy facilities are burning, thick smoke is rising over refinery zones, and industrial storage areas that once supported missile and fuel supply chains are being ripped apart by deep strike missions. The B-1 is built for long-range, high-speed bombardment, carrying enormous payloads deep into contested regions and unloading precision weapons on major infrastructure targets. When a bomber like this starts hitting refineries, depots, and industrial warehouses, it means the campaign has moved beyond simple battlefield pressure. It means the United States is now trying to choke the regime's ability to keep paying for the war itself. Stay with me, because in this video, I'm going to show you how the B-1 bomber is carrying out these deep strike missions, why Iran's energy infrastructure is now one of the biggest targets of the war, and how these attacks are also crushing missile factories, launch support systems, and the broader network that keeps Iran's military machine alive. The strikes we're seeing now are not random targets. The focus has shifted toward Iran's energy network, the oil refineries, fuel depots, and industrial complexes that generate the revenue powering the country's military machine. When these facilities burn, it doesn't just damage infrastructure, it cuts directly into the financial system that funds ballistic missile production, proxy forces across the Middle East, and the logistics needed to sustain long-term conflict. Several of these facilities are enormous industrial sites, some stretching across hundreds of acres. Large storage tanks, refining towers, transport pipelines, and fuel distribution hubs are all tightly connected parts of the same system. When precision weapons strike these complexes, the damage spreads quickly. Fires jump from one storage tank to another, pipelines rupture, and entire sections of the facility become impossible to operate. This is exactly where the B-1 Lancer bomber becomes so valuable. Unlike smaller aircraft that carry only a limited number of weapons, the B-1 is designed for large-scale strike missions. It can carry massive payloads and release multiple precision bombs across an entire target zone in a single pass. When a bomber like this arrives over a refinery or fuel depot, the strike is not limited to a single building. Multiple critical points inside the facility can be hit almost simultaneously. Reports from the operation indicate that these bombers have been targeting oil storage depots, transport infrastructure, and industrial warehouses tied to missile manufacturing. Some of these warehouse complexes are the size of major distribution centers, large enough to store hundreds of ballistic missiles or drone components at once. Destroying those facilities not only removes existing stockpiles, but also disrupts the production pipeline that keeps new weapons flowing to the battlefield. Another important factor is timing. Energy infrastructure takes months, sometimes years, to repair once critical components are destroyed. Refineries rely on specialized equipment, complex refining towers, and large processing units that cannot simply be replaced overnight. When precision bombs destroy those elements, the facility may remain offline for an extended period. That creates a long-term economic shock that goes far beyond the immediate explosion. And that is the strategy behind these strikes. Instead of only chasing individual missile launchers across the country, the campaign is now targeting the industrial backbone that allows those launchers to exist in the first place. To understand why the B-1 bomber suddenly became so important in this phase of the war, you have to look at what this aircraft is actually built to do. The B-1B Lancer was designed as a long-range supersonic strike bomber capable of carrying one of the largest conventional weapon loads in the world. In a single mission, A B-1 can carry close to 75,000 pounds of bombs and missiles across 3 internal weapons bays. That kind of payload means one aircraft can strike multiple large targets during the same flight. Speed is another factor that makes the B-1 effective in these operations. The aircraft can reach speeds of around Mach 1.2, allowing it to move quickly between target zones and reduce the time it spends exposed in hostile airspace. The bomber also uses terrain-following radar, which allows it to fly at low altitude if necessary, staying below radar coverage and approaching targets from unexpected directions. Earlier in the operation, when Iranian air defences were still active, B-1 bombers were able to launch long-range weapons from a safe distance. One of the primary weapons used in this role is the AGM-158 JASSM cruise missile. These missiles can travel hundreds of miles after launch and are designed to strike hardened targets such as missile production facilities, command centres, and underground infrastructure. By firing these weapons from outside the most dangerous areas, bombers can destroy critical targets while minimising risk to the aircraft. As air defences weakened, the mission profile expanded. Instead of relying only on standoff missiles, B-1 bombers could move closer to the target areas and release precision-guided bombs such as JDAMs. These Joint Direct Attack munitions convert traditional bombs into GPS-guided weapons capable of hitting specific points inside large industrial complexes. A single B-1 can carry dozens of these bombs. For example, the aircraft can release up to 24 2,000-pound GBU-31 JDAMs, or dozens of smaller 500-pound bombs in a single sortie. When these bombs are used against massive refinery complexes or industrial warehouses, the effect is devastating. Multiple structures inside the same facility can be destroyed within seconds. Storage tanks, refining towers, pipeline junctions, and transport hubs can all be struck during the same attack run. These missions also rely heavily on aerial refueling. B-1 bombers often fly extremely long distances before reaching their targets, sometimes taking off from distant bases and refueling multiple times in the air along the way. Tanker aircraft keep the bombers supplied with fuel, allowing them to stay airborne for extended missions and reach targets thousands of miles away. This combination of range, speed, and payload is what allows the B-1 to play such a critical role in these strikes. Once air superiority is established by fighters such as the F-22 and F-35, the B-1 can move in and deliver massive amounts of precision firepower across a wide area. And that is exactly what we are now seeing across Iran's infrastructure network as refineries, depots, and industrial facilities continue to come under heavy bombardment. While the refinery strikes are grabbing attention because of the massive fires and economic impact, another equally important target is Iran's missile production network. Intelligence reports indicate that several large industrial warehouses across the country were being used to assemble ballistic missiles and store drone components. Some of these facilities are enormous, comparable in size to large distribution centres, capable of holding hundreds of missile bodies, guidance systems, and fuel components at the same time. These locations became prime targets once Operation Epic Fury moved into its deeper strike phase. Instead of only destroying launchers in the field, coalition forces began targeting the supply chain that feeds those launchers. Destroying a launcher removes one missile from the battlefield, but destroying a warehouse removes hundreds of potential missiles before they are ever deployed. This is particularly important for Iran's ballistic missile program, which relies on stockpiles stored in dispersed industrial locations. Many of these launch systems are hidden in rural areas, civilian industrial zones, or agricultural land to make them harder to detect. However, once those locations are identified through reconnaissance and satellite intelligence, bombers like the B-1 can strike them quickly and with overwhelming firepower. These strikes have also targeted launch infrastructure itself. Mobile launchers, transport vehicles, and fueling systems are essential parts of the missile network. Without them, even a large stockpile of missiles becomes far less useful. Reports from the battlefield suggest that many launchers have already been destroyed or damaged, which is one reason the number of missile waves being launched has dropped significantly compared to the opening days of the conflict. Another factor is drone production. Iran has relied heavily on Shahed-type drones to pressure regional opponents. Several storage areas and production facilities connected to these drones have also been targeted during the strikes. By removing both missile and drone manufacturing capacity at the same time, the campaign aims to reduce Iran's ability to sustain long-term attacks. In other words, these strikes are not just about immediate battlefield results. They are designed to dismantle the industrial backbone of Iran's missile program. And with heavy bombers like the B-1 delivering massive payloads against these facilities, that backbone is now under relentless pressure. As these strikes intensified, Iran did attempt to respond. Ballistic missiles and drone attacks were launched toward regional targets, including Gulf states and areas connected to US allies. Some of those projectiles were intercepted by air defense systems, while others caused limited damage to infrastructure, such as energy facilities and transport areas. But compared to the opening phase of the conflict, the scale of these attacks has already dropped significantly. One major reason for this decline is the destruction of missile launch infrastructure and storage sites earlier in the campaign. Even if a country still has missiles in reserve, those weapons are far less effective without functioning launch vehicles, transport systems, and coordination centers. Once those supporting systems are damaged or destroyed, launching large coordinated strike waves becomes far more difficult. This is where the B-1 bomber strikes begin to change the overall momentum of the war. By targeting oil infrastructure, industrial production sites, and logistics hubs, the campaign is putting pressure on the systems that allow Iran to sustain long-term military operations. Energy facilities generate revenue and fuel supplies that support transportation, manufacturing, and military logistics. The damage to refineries and storage depots also creates logistical problems for the military itself. Fuel distribution becomes more complicated, supply chains become slower, and large equipment movements require more planning. All of this reduces the speed at which a military force can organize new operations. Another key factor is air superiority. With much of Iran's air defense network already weakened earlier in the operation, coalition aircraft now have greater freedom to operate over large sections of the country. Fighters such as the F-22 and F-35 provide cover, while bombers and strike aircraft carry out attacks on infrastructure and industrial targets. This layered approach allows the campaign to maintain continuous pressure on multiple strategic points at once, but the conflict is far from slowing down. Iranian forces still have remaining missile stockpiles, and intelligence analysts believe several launch systems may still be hidden in rural areas and underground facilities. At the same time, the pressure is spreading beyond land targets. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical shipping routes in the world, has become another major concern. Nearly a fifth of the global oil supply normally passes through this narrow waterway, which means any disruption immediately affects energy markets and regional security. With commercial vessels avoiding the area and naval forces operating under high alert, the situation in the Gulf could quickly become another flashpoint in the wider conflict. Iran still maintains a number of fast attack boats and smaller naval units that are capable of harassing commercial shipping or attempting limited strikes against passing vessels. Even though larger Iranian naval assets have already been damaged earlier in the campaign, these smaller platforms can still create instability in the region. Because of that risk, coalition forces have increased surveillance flights and naval patrols across the Gulf, watching for any movement that could threaten maritime traffic. Meanwhile, intelligence monitoring continues to track remaining missile launch activity inside Iran. Analysts believe that some mobile launchers and support vehicles may still be operating from concealed locations, including rural terrain and hardened underground facilities. This means air operations are likely to continue targeting both infrastructure and mobile missile systems, keeping pressure on the remaining elements of Iran's strike capability. If you found this breakdown useful and want more detailed explanations of modern military operations like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more happening in this conflict, and we'll continue breaking it down step by step as new developments emerge.